Hello and welcome to the AFL High Performance Podcast. Today's episode, our monthly update, was for strength and conditioning coaches, high performance staff members, as well as sports scientists or any hybrid of between those three sort of positions, classic positions. I'm going to talk a little bit around AFL, the off-season, pre-season, and season transitions. While we have these three blocks, big rocks for each phase, balancing between recovery and workload, and how our recommendations change between each three of the three different phases, how technology can enhance performance, physical performance, and the importance of profiling your group. But firstly, from a motivation point of view, it's important that everyone in the off-season, coaches as well as athletes, have a break. May seem common sense, but it just in terms of because it's quite a rigorous year, so having time away with family, friends, all those that perhaps you sacrifice connection for throughout the year, particularly in season, with different schedules every week depending on game day. It's critical that you reconnect and have some time for yourself on your own hobbies or getting out and doing things that you love that light you up. So athlete or coach listening to that's critical, and anyone that's worked in sport or is an athlete at a professional level in sport will understand that from a sustainability point of view, but also for your energy. Second to that, off season is a great time to learn. So from athletes, they might go into some training in some training camps in different environments to expose themselves to different training methodology, but also to just sharpen themselves up and freshen themselves up with different voices, different way of doing things, and get exposed to a unique style of training methodology. Same for high performance staff, strength and conditioning coaches, whether being on the ASCA conference to keep a finger on the pulse on the latest research, and speaking to people in different sporting organisations as well as leagues, from A-League in Australia to rugby league, international rugby and AFL. I love spending time professional development in programs. So like more recently, I spent some time in the VIS in this off season. It was great I've never seen an institute system and how it works, and get a greater understanding of what it's like being a strength and conditioning coach in an institute system. It's a growing space, something that Australia has done really well from a world-class level. We don't have the same amount of athletes as other countries, but we stack up consistently over the years, particularly ever since the Sydney Olympics, at an international level at the biggest stage of the Olympics. So great practitioners. It was great to sort of learn off them, as well as just get a bit of a different understanding on how S&Cs work in a different environment. The year before that, I spent some time in the Melbourne Rebels, same sort of thing, get exposed to a different league, as well as work and sort of collaborate and learn off other practitioners. So if you haven't done that yet, even if you're not working full-time professional level, semi-pro level, reach out to people. You'll be surprised how open practitioners are to have you in their environment. Obviously, you got to ask the right time. Finals time, people, clubs, organisations, staff members, they're not going to want. Same for the athletes. New people in, you just want to stick to routine and keep things familiar for the athletes. Really important time for performance. But in off-season time, it's coming down to rehab sessions or pre-season time, particularly pre-Christmas, great opportunity to learn. And there's no better learning in my experience than actually seeing how people implement. And watching and observing, just being a fly on the wall in organisations. So highly recommend that. So that's the off-season phase. From a pre-season point of view, as S&Cs, obviously it's time for us to get back to work. So we want to get back into our routine pretty quickly. If you've moved clubs like I have recently, coming from the Melbourne Demons to the Parramatta Eels, it's a connection phase is the most important aspect of the pre-Christmas sort of pre-season block. Learning the game, but also learning our coaching philosophy. What's our game model? So from my respective roles, which is largely looking after speed and return to play, I'm connected to what the head coach and the coaching team are trying to deliver with the coaches. So to give them, work closely with like Blair Mills and Fergus Mojo, our performance staff. Our goal is to give the physical qualities to ensure that the athletes can play their role for the team, to allow the team to maximise their performance. So if we don't know the game model and we don't know how the coaches want to play, then how can we have that focus in the gym and on the field? So that's critical, particularly with speed. Watching the game like rugby, clearly speed is a really important physical aspect of the game, whether we break it down into acceleration, your starting speed, your max velocity, particularly with the backs, and then, of course, our offensive agility and defensive agility, which is typically the way it sort of broke down, same as Australian rules football. You've got offensive agility, defensive agility. Clearly, with offensive agility, we can get creative. It's quite fun for programming because we want to give the athletes, expose them to different stimuluses, different contexts for them to be able to adapt and basically bring flair to those sessions. So they have more options. They've been exposed to more different shapes, different patterns. So then come game day, they can reflex. They can just be intuitive and just challenge the defense with lots of different patterns. If we're consistently just drilling in the same repetition over and over and over again, it's going to be pretty predictable, and the defense of the opposition will be able to pick that up. And you're not going to be able to create as much space compared to an unpredictable offensive agility athlete or team. Defensive agility, I think repetition is the key. So consistency, having clear landmarks of what success looks like, and understanding what the coaches are doing. A lot of our defensive agility in rugby is done with the football in the drill. So a lot of the coaches are drilling it, but also from a warm-up point of view, I'll make sure I'm prepping the athletes so they can bring intensity to those defensive agility drills, where typically they're wanting to stay square, and we want to make sure we've got them ready for that staggered inside shoulder stance. So that's where working on athletic position is really critical, and their ability to be able to accelerate but equally decelerate in close spaces is key. So that's just an example of pre-season. We're laying the foundations for the athletes to be able to play the game model. Then in season, clearly, this is where we've laid the physical foundations, the fundamentals. The athletes are really clear on our routine. So we want to keep that familiar in season, whether you're a +2, -3 schedule, or maybe you're a +2, -2, whatever your weekly schedule is. We want to make sure that's consistent for the athletes. So the in-season fluctuation of the week should feel familiar. Obviously, you can have different weeks for 5 day, 6 day, 7 day, 8 day turnarounds. But for a 7 day, after a couple of weeks, the athlete should know exactly how the week flows from recovery through to preparation. So familiarization is a big rock in season for staff and for athletes. Consistency is key. So we don't want to be changing the program all the time. We want to just have a real clear understanding of what's going to be really important for the game model, whether it be max strength for the forwards, whether it be speed strength for the backs, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that we're getting exposed to, we're surfing the wave of force velocity, but we're having a clear focus on what adaptations we want to improve in season. So they're in their best physical shape. Sorry about that. Come finals, we don't want to be detraining come finals. So they should largely be making some form of PBs. Now, that will be relative to the athlete, their training background, and the position they play. So some athletes are going to be strong enough. You don't need to get them stronger, but we want to try and generate that force, that rate of force, faster. And that's where you can make progress with those athletes. Some athletes, newbie gains, they're going to be getting stronger, they're going to be getting more powerful, and they're going to be able to generate force a lot faster. All aspects will improve. And then for others, it may just simply be player availability is the big rock, because for the last 3 or 4 years, they just haven't been able to play the whole season. So we want to have an individualized program with that athlete that we know they respond really well to that program, and it's very little change. So we're not trying to get greedy and maximize physical capacities. We're trying to just essentially get them available for that season. And you might be sacrificing some physical capacities to allow for that. so that allow the game and the train to be the main stimulus, and just have a less is more approach in the gym, for example. And that's some blanket rules there. Obviously, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Maybe an athlete has some real physical limitations, like they're undersized, and that's what's keeps causing them injuries. So for them, you wouldn't have a less is more approach. You want to be adding more volume to them. You might be perhaps even taking them into a mini preseason in season. So they might not play for a month, so you can maximize their physical development because they're really talented, but they just are getting crushed in the contest and injured. So therefore, we need to build some body armor. We need time with that athlete. So obviously, context will vary on that approach. But they're the three different phases that we sort of approach as an S&C, both from recharging, remotivating ourselves, setting ourselves up so we're hitting the ground running come pre-season. You want to have a real clear focus of the game model and work back from that as a performance staff. And then in season, we're still focusing on maximizing their physical capacities, hitting some PBs, whether it be on the four stacks with their drop jump testing, max velocity, their acceleration, maybe their work rate in games. There's got to be some hitting PBs in the gym with their back squat, bench press, whatever it might be. They've got to be moving the needle, got to be improving. So then when we do sharpen up come finals time, if your team does make it come finals, you're going in with a lot of momentum, and you're going in with the athletes having at their best physical capacities to put their skills on show. Hopefully this episode resonated. If you haven't heard already, I'm interviewing Greg Haff at 9:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, the 10th of December. So make sure to tune in then. We've got a few big name guests coming up on the podcast as well. Alex Arcadian, the head of performance of St Kilda, Les Spellman, obviously sprint coach, Paul Couples, and Aaron Scully, both strong rugby background and performance coaches. So there's 4 that we'll be interviewing in the new year. Perhaps if you have someone in mind that you think should be on the show, they don't have to be necessarily AFL specific, because we can talk about other sports and how that can enhance AFL performance, whether it be staff members or for footballers. So if you have anyone that you think would be a great guest, email me at jack@pelicapro.com. Greg Haff was recommended, Les Spellman was recommended, and I've reached out because some listeners have recommended those guests. So Alex Academy was recommended from a recent guest. So I love hearing from our community, from people that follow the podcast or have been guests themselves. So if that is you, feel free to email me or direct message me on our social media. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel and podcast, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. If you could leave a review, it allows us to reach more listeners, and it's greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you on the next episode.